Have you ever heard about a fascinating tradition of frog marriages in India? I think all of you might have seen the marriages of Ambani, right? Been so much in news. But what about this frog tradition? What about this tradition of frog marriages? Is it a superstition? Is it a faith? Why do you think that that is being practiced across your country? Is there any science behind it? Let us understand all these things in this video. Hello everyone, this is Venkatesh, your faculty for geography in textbook. Welcome to the YouTube channel of Super Coaching UPSC by Textbook. And in this video, we'll understand this fascinating tradition of frog marriages. So, as you see in the news across the country, this fascinating tradition of frog marriages has been there across multiple places in our country. For example, in Assam, it is known as Bekulibia, as you can see, which is known as frog marriages. It's a traditional practice rooted in Assam. And it is also referred as multiple names across the different parts of the country. Manduka Paranaya, Bangarbai in say in Tripura, if I'm not wrong, right? This is in South India, which this ritual take place during the dry summer months with the aim of invoking rain. In fact, it has also been a ritual which is also practiced in June, July as well. Different cultures across the country, different kinds of traditions and some kind of beliefs. What is the reason behind this belief? Frogs are getting married. There was one major incident I also heard about in Madhya Pradesh, where uh, by June, July, when the monsoon, which was supposed to be arrived by then, if it did not, if the monsoonal rains were not witnessed, the regions there, the priests over there, suggest this ritual in the hope of pleasing the god, the Indra, right? The Lord Indra, right? The god of Indra, where we can, there is associated with rain, right? So it's all about rains. Then, if you see the as per Assamese tradition, there is also a unique story which has been told culture after culture, the year after, I mean, generation after generation, as part of the culture which you are listening. You can see here, as per the Assamese tradition, the ancestors have a poem that describes how farmers question the clouds, asking why there is more rain, and thereby the clouds explain that if the frogs do not croak, then there won't be rain. And as soon as the frogs croak, that is when you can see that it triggers rainfall. The monsoon marks the frogs' mating season, and when they croak to call their mates, it triggers rainfall. So, as per the story and as per the culture, they're saying that when the frogs are living happily, when there is a decent kinds of, with the frogs, they are seen something associated with the rainfall. That is the idea. The whole aspect is very deeply rooted with nothing but pleasing the Indra, right? As per the ritual, pleasing the god. Then, is there any scientific evidence to it? I don't know, but definitely one thing is there. As part of the environmental thing, we do study something called as indicator species. Frogs are actually an indicator species. You see, in India, majority of the rains in India are with the monsoons. 70% of the rains in India, 75% of the rains are associated with monsoons. When your monsoons are associated with the floods and the droughts, you should see that the nature of the monsoon, whether there is the vagaries of the monsoon would sometimes, unfortunately, will lead to drought in certain situations, which is very, very disastrous, be it for the livelihood of the farmers who are dependent on the rains, be it for the local economy, be it according of the even the environmental water replenishment, whatever. So, when there is no amount of rainfall or when there is some challenges with rainfall, that is when we need some hope, and that is the hope, that is where the people lead with the hope of wanting a rainfall. That is when they pray to the god through this ritual of frogs marriages. Scientifically, if you see it, frogs are regarded as indicator species. They are considered as what? Indicator species. As the name suggests, indicate. What does they indicate? They indicate something very unique. What is the uniqueness? The uniqueness is about the environmental condition in a region. Imagine in a situation where there is no amount of water in a region, that will be drought. if there is a drought, frogs will migrate. So frogs are an indicator of environmental conditions of a region, of the water availability of a region. So in a way, we can say that if the frogs are surviving in a region, it indicates that water supply is decent. If they are migrating, that indicates that there might be no water. That is a scientific proven thing. So that's what we call it as indicator species. Frogs, toads, salamanders are sensitive environmental indicators is because of their skin. When you see that reptiles, birds and mammals, amphibians are still partially tied to the water, spending at least part of their life cycle as eggs and juveniles in an aquatic environment. And you all know that the frogs, they don't have a hard shell around them like the eggs of the reptiles and birds, and they must remain in the water or they will dry out. Because they need to remain in water, otherwise they will dry out. That is the reason why they always need water, and if there is no water in a region, they will start running away. This is what we'll call it as scientifically an indicator species. And such kind of things, see, when an environmentalist, whenever an environmental specialist, studies about a region's pollution, studies about the lack of availability of water in a region, they need not study about what is the availability of rainfall, meteorological conditions, and all these kind of things. They'll simply ask this question: why, what is the nature of the frogs are there? Are they migrating or not? If frogs are not migrating, that automatically indicates that water supply might be good enough. So environmentalists need not study about the entire ecosystem. They will take one aspect of an animal, how it is behaving, and any changes that will change some kind of a challenge, and through that challenge they will try to understand the close linkages of the an ecosystem. That is how environmentalists understand an ecosystem. You can see that is how frogs as indicator species, they will help us in understanding the availability of water stress in a region. You see, and also along with this, the additional advantage of the frogs is they are amphibians, where they are both predators and prey. Many other animals are also affected by them. So the crucial thing here about the frogs is this. You see, it gives valuable insight of how an ecosystem functions. And you see that their skin is so porous, absorbs gases like oxygen, liquids like water. Amphibians at all stages of life are sensitive to environmental changes, especially many types of pollution that may be in the atmosphere, water, or soil. So they indicate about these things. They indicate about how an ecosystem functions, especially with respect to water, drought, water availability, which is closely linked with our agriculture of drought things. So what is the concept of an indicator? I think now you are able to understand the fascinating story, right? Look at the linkages here. An indicator species an organism whose presence or absence or abundance reflects presence or absence or abundance reflects something where the environmental condition is varying. A specific environmental condition is indicated by presence of that particular organism or absence of that organism or abundance of that organism. Look at the linkage. And any other variation, they can signal a change in the condition of that particular ecosystem. Just like the frogs associated with water stress, availability of water, drought, you also find plants or lichens especially sensitive to heavy metals or acids in precipitation may be indicators of air pollution. That is, they indicate about something about air pollution. So this is about the indicator species. Now you have to tell me whether it is a superstition or whether it is a faith. See, faith, it's about belief, hope about a certain thing. When you do a certain kind of a ritual, and if it will instill some kind of hope that things will hopefully will change, that's a good thing. Associatedly, scientifically, instead of irrational behaving, along with this belief, if you take care of the environment around you, make it sure that water is being abundantly available by having replenishment ponds and all those kind of things, you use proper around water harvesting structures and you replenish the water naturally, you are actually connecting the faith with the religion. That is when the beauty happens. Occasionally, you'd also find that it turns into irrational thing. What is the irrationality? I will tell you. Back in in one of the few years ago, when there was no rainfall by early July in India, the farmers were worried about the availability of rainfall in one of the districts in India. So they have conducted this traditional ritual, which is an age-old practice of, frogs getting married. They have identified a bride. They have identified a groom. They made the marriage. The successfully marriage ritual was done. Once the marriage was done, with the hope of good rains, luckily at the same time, we have seen that the monsoons were very much active. After the marriage, within a span of 3-4 days, there were decent amount of rain. Unfortunately, there was more rain in that year. When there is more rain that year, the problem was the more rain turned into floods. That is a natural disaster. That is fair enough in terms of the natural disasters. But you know what did the villagers have done? In one of the region, they started contemplating the thought of what about divorcing the frogs? The very frogs which were an indicator of the frogs marriage, which is an indicator of, good amount of rainfall. They were contemplating, divorce of the frogs because it might lead to a because it led to a very significant rain, which is now floods. Now, this is crossing the hope, right? So, is it a superstition or faith? Yes, there are so many kinds of things in our culture where there is a scientific reason of why they have started, but why it is being continued and how it changes over time lies the challenge. If you observe that carefully, many of our cultures, they have a reason. Understand the reason, try to replenish, try to rationally think about what is the relevance in the present era and try to bring that close linkages of the tradition with respect to the relevance. That is how the beauty of science versus faith, hope, continuity of traditions, cultures will happen, and that is when you will see the success of our culture, right? Hope you all have understood this fascinating story. Do share this to as many people as possible, and if you want the PDF file, you can get this through my Telegram channel, where I'll be giving more such updates about such kind of very much wonderful things. And definitely, please don't forget to the subscribe button so that you will be always informed of the such kind of fascinating stories, and you will be always live, what do you say, you are learning more kind of things. That is the things. Happy learnings to all of you. Thank you. I'll come again with a new topic.